Justin A.W. Blair here. I'm a writer, I'm a painter, I am an enjoyer of an occasional mystery. A very occasional mystery. This is going to be a video about Raymond Chandler's The High Window. It'll be relatively short. As fans of my channel will know, I primarily talk about fantasy and science fiction, but I had this copy laying about. I decided to pick it up for a little change of pace. Now, I've read Raymond Chandler before, but not extensively. He's really one of the only mystery authors that I enjoy. And again, it's a genre that I don't read a lot. There's just a few things I want to talk about in terms of this book. And I'm going to actually do something slightly different, which is I'm going to read a few passages from the book also, because I was struck with the sheer talent of Chandler as a writer, and in a particular mode. Now, I'm not going to get into the distinctions in a complicated way between hard-boiled and noir. Those are kind of subcategories of mystery, I suppose, the genre. The difference, simply put, as I understand it, is that noir is more focused on the internal, and hard-boiled is more focused on the external. Chandler, then, is a hard-boiled detective novelist, without a doubt. I won't say as I was reading it, perhaps after I was reading it, I was thinking about a way to approach the work. I was reminded of the book, The Birth of Tragedy by Nietzsche, which strangely is not one of my favorite books by Nietzsche. It's not, he hadn't developed, I think, his style to its highest point yet. It's his first book. But it is one of the books that I always come back to as I think about other books and think about other events. Because he has this basic distinction between the Apollonian and the Dionysian. And we're not going to get into that in any depth right now, except to say we can think about the Apollonian as light as opposed to the Dionysian dark. The Apollonian as the, he would say the plastic arts, sculpture and the like, as opposed to the Dionysian art of music. The Apollonian favoring reason and the external, the Dionysian favoring chaos and the internal. There are other distinctions that could be made, but I think you get the point. There's something that a lot of people miss about this book, though, about The Birth of Tragedy. We're going to bring this around to how it relates to The High Window by Raymond Chandler, hard-boiled mystery written in the 40s. In Nietzsche's conception of this Apollonian-Dionysian dichotomy, while the Apollonian seems to be light, seems to be sun, as opposed to the dark and the moon of the Dionysian, the reason that the Greeks, or one part of the Greeks, and the Greek spirit, is associated with Apollonian in many ways, is because this externality, this outerness, this light, is actually a kind of protective mechanism against that Dionysian dark instinct. And so it's not as simple as just saying on one hand the Apollonian, on the other Dionysian. The Apollonian is almost like a kind of, I don't want to say a reaction to the Dionysian, but it's something like that. Now, Chandler first is, and we're not going to do biography. You can look up on Wikipedia. Who cares about that? You don't need me for that. But he is very much associated with the city of Los Angeles, with that light of Southern California. And as you read Chandler, you find his prose to be spare, but there is a great externality to it. There's this kind of sense of an amoral objectivity that seems almost camera-like. And as I was thinking about this book, and I, of course, did go back and read the Wikipedia article, I think every book, maybe one or maybe every book that Chandler wrote was turned into a movie. And I also think about the time period he's writing in the 1940s where cinema is really coming into its own. But there's something about the entirety of not only his prose style, but the totality of this work, which, you see, we view the events through the perspective of Philip Marlowe, the detective. Marlowe doesn't judge, in some ways, the moral failings or the moral situation of a mystery that he's involved in. There's something very external. There's something very, we view the events in the mystery as it unravels, almost as if looking through a lens, through a camera lens. But it is Marlowe's perspective. I'm going to read a few passages to give you a sense of this, but also it's really amazing how you see every single character. I mean, the thing to take from Chandler, for me, is how to do description in a succinct, oftentimes a 3 to 4 sentence paragraph. And he absolutely nails down the character. But it's not interior. It's not really a description of the emotional state, or it's not psychological. It's not trying to get into the head of the person that he is describing. But through this kind of objective, cold lens of description, we see the internal character. And we see these characters absolutely perfectly. I mean, there is a dated aspect to this that comes from the 1940s. And you see it a lot in the kind of hard-boiled 1940s detective language, which I thought about reading a passage from, because there are moments where it's practically indecipherable to a person in the year 2026. Not quite, but it is. It's a slang which has been forgotten. But I see these characters clearer than almost any other writer that I've read. Chandler has a unique gift for giving us the character. And not only that, giving us the setting. There's something interesting, and it goes back to this distinction of the Apollonian and the Dionysian. He describes architecture a lot. And architecture, again, is an art of Apollo as opposed to Dionysus. There's reason to it. There is structure. It is the opposite of chaos. Architecture is the kind of pinnacle of reasoning, human reasoning, and logic to some degree, made manifest in the world, taking materials and putting them together in a reasonable way that makes sense and stands. So I noticed that also too, as I was thinking of this distinction about how he seems to be the one thing that I found a little bit boring, because this is not a boring book. I mean, it reads so quickly. But where it did get not bogged down, because again, he's so sparing in everything he writes, it was strange to me how he almost exactly describes rooms and buildings. Now, that has a little bit to do with just the concept of course, the detective is as an observer. And again, is this kind of objective observer. But let's read a few passages, relatively short, to give you a sense of this. A long-limbed, languorous type of showgirl blonde lay at her ease in one of the chairs, with her feet raised on a padded rest and a tall misted glass at her elbow, near a silver ice bucket and a scotch bottle. She looked at us lazily as we came over the grass. From 30 feet away, she looked like a lot of class. From 10 feet away, she looked like something made up to be seen from 30 feet away. Her mouth was too wide, her eyes were too blue, her makeup was too vivid, the thin arch of her eyebrows was almost fantastic in its curve and spread, and the mascara was so thick on her eyelashes that they looked like miniature iron railings. I mean, first, it's funny, the 30 feet away and the 10 feet away, but I mean, you see that person, don't you? I see that person exactly. Another character description. There were 2 open grill elevators, but only one seemed to be running, and that not busy. An old man sat inside it, slack-jawed and watery-eyed, on a piece of folded burlap on top of a wooden stool. He looked as if he had been sitting there since the Civil War and had come out of that badly. I got in with him and said 8, and he wrestled the doors shut and cranked his buggy, and we dragged upwards lurching. The old man breathed hard as if he was carrying the elevator on his back. I got out at my floor and started along the hallway, and behind me the old man leaned out of the car and blew his nose with his fingers into a carton full of floor sweepings. Again, a simple description of an elevator man, a guy's elderly, kind of down on his luck, working a bad job, and you just see it perfectly. These descriptions last a paragraph, like I say, and they just paint the picture absolutely and completely. And again, see, we're seeing it through the detective's eye, and the detective is paying attention. He's marking down faces. He's remembering faces that he may need to use later to recall back, whatever. So again, we see everything almost as if it's through the aperture of a camera. And again, but it's filtered through Marlowe's mind as the POV. So we'll just continue with a couple more descriptions to give you the sense of what I'm talking about here. Out of the apartment houses come women who should be young but have faces like stale beer. Men with pulled down hats and quick eyes that look the street over behind the cupped hand that shields the match flame. Worn intellectuals with cigarette coughs and no money in the bank. Fly cops with granite faces and unwavering eyes. Cokies and coke peddlers, people who look like nothing in particular and know it, and once in a while even men that actually go to work, but they come out early, when the wide cracked sidewalks are empty and still have dew on them. Again, and again, you see here, you get the description of human beings, but you also get thrown in these little, saying architectural elements isn't exactly right, but the landscape of the people, the cracked sidewalks, mirroring the kind of cracked up people that he's describing there. Again, we'll do one more. A Czech girl in peach bloom Chinese pajamas came over to take my hat and disapprove of my clothes. She had eyes like strange sins. A cigarette girl came down the gangway. She wore an egret plume in her hair, enough clothes to hide behind a toothpick. One of her long, beautiful, naked legs was silver and one was gold. She had the utterly disdainful expression of a dame who makes her dates by long distance. I went into the bar and sank into a leather bar seat packed with down. Glasses tinkled gently, lights glowed softly. There were quiet voices whispering of love or 10% or whatever they whisper about in a place like that. Really all I wanted to say about Chandler, I just wanted to read a few of these passages of description of character. There's many more, several that I underlined. I think for writers, anyone who's interested in writing descriptions of characters and landscape, well, landscape is not exactly right. It's really about the character. It's about, there's no judgments whatsoever about the actions of these people, about their interiority, and yet we get everything about it simply through the physical descriptions of the characters in the Chandler's LA. It's something really special. It's something I think writers should take a look at. It's something I think if you are looking for a quick, fast read, something to maybe get out of the genres you're reading, this is something to definitely take a look at. The High Window, I don't necessarily think it's even Chandler's best known work, but it's something great. On this mystery tour that we've been on together, Creepin' Clues, an anthology that I am a part of, came out recently. Had no idea when I'll actually publish this video, but this will be around. I did my own detective story in this, actually. It was an anthology about occult detectives. And I have a story in there called Nemean Games. It is not like Chandler at all. It is, in fact, quite the opposite. It is much more Dionysian than Apollonian. Perhaps it'll interest you. You can always check it out. Justin A.W. Blair asking you, I ask you nothing. You may like or you may subscribe or you may not.